All right, welcome to episode 4, where we are going to take this drawing and try to push it toward a finished work of art. So, episode 1, we were finding the foundations, finding angles, trying to place things correctly. Episode 2, moving from the big picture to the more detailed pictures and getting value placed in. Episode 3 was beginning to explore more artistically the story of this subject, the story of the pose. And now, episode 4, we're going to try to take this toward my original vision for the drawing. So here I am. I'm observing how the value darkens on the top of the cheekbone as it wraps around the side of the head. It stays dark as it moves toward her nose. I mean, this value patterning describes so much. And I'd like to capture how subtle and how soft it is. I will probably end up pushing her hair out farther as well. But for the time being, it looks like I'm rechecking some angles, trying to find, using a vertical line, where is the gap between the corner of her mouth and her 2 front teeth going to land. Really want to get that correct. That's a little bit too sharp for my liking. You know, I did this drawing a year ago, and this is my first time watching the footage. And I'm noticing a lot of strategic errors that I think I'm making. I don't want her 2 front teeth to be a main character in this story. I want them to be secondary or even tertiary characters. Her eyes, her slouch, her hair, those are the things I'm mostly interested in. So I really want to go in and soften up the value patterning in her mouth. I think the corners of her mouth are even more interesting than the teeth. So I want to keep those soft. Hopefully I go in and soften it up a little bit more. It's really important at this stage of the drawing to continue to step back, walk away from it, stand 15 feet away, and let your eye dart back and forth between the subject and the drawing until you get a clear understanding of what you need to do and how to do it. I really need to take that smudge stick and draw that value across from the left side of the chin all the way to the right side of the chin. Looks like she just ate a really messy popsicle or something. There we go. That's a lot better. Now I need to rediscover the shadow underneath the bottom lip. There we go. That shadow right there tells a massive amount of the story. The reason being is you have these columns of muscle rising on either side, the left and the right side of your chin, culminating in a bunched muscle group on the sides of your mouth. And it creates this hollow underneath your bottom lip, between your bottom lip and your chin. And that little shadow right there is such an important shadow to get correctly. For me, my strategy in finding the gesture of the mouth, the expression, I want to place that shadow correctly, and I want to place the corners of the mouth correctly. Because so many of the muscles that come from other parts of the face into the mouth, so many of those muscles that create these really soft, subtle facial expressions. These are the shapes. These are sort of the shadow groups that describe what these muscles are doing. The shadow groups in the corners of the mouth and underneath the bottom lip. So think about that when you're looking at photos of people, when you're looking at friends and family. Look at how everyone is different. and how those three shadows tell the story. You know, it's at this stage in the drawing where I will probably begin to do more thinking and less shading, because as you move toward the end of your drawing, and this one is clearly moving toward the end of the drawing, it's easy to overwork. It's easy to take part of the drawing that you like and push it to a point where you no longer like it as much. I've done this thousands of times. And consequently, I've learned that when I like a part of the drawing, I don't touch it. I sit down and think, and I look at it and I say, what does it need? And how do I accomplish that? You know, here it's really high time that I articulate further the angle of the jaw coming down from her ear and into the underside of her jawline. So hopefully I start working on that soon. And there's a lot to be said for really moving in confidently with putting the right value in at the right places. I'm probably allowing my eye to drift out of focus and really trying to just capture the basic shapes of the clumps of the hair and how they fall down around, sort of framing the head. You know, as we shade, as we push the values at this stage in the drawing, it's so easy to just move in mechanically and automatically, especially when we like a part of the drawing or when we don't like a part of the drawing. We have this tendency to just want to start shading. And I think one of the most important things I've learned is to resist that urge, to really just hold yourself back and think more. A lot of what I'm doing here in this stage of the drawing is I'm just thinking about angles. I'm sorry, not angles. Thinking about edges. Look at the soft edge that I just added between the nostril and the side of the nose. And I'm going to soften it even further. I'll probably continue softening using the smudge stick and my kneaded eraser. But then the hard edge, differentiating the nostril from the ball of the nose or the cheek from the hair behind it. And then look at the different parts of the cheek. So the lower part of the cheek, there's high contrast between the cheek and the hair behind it. But where the eye is, it's much lower contrast. We've got this shadow group coming in. So you can see I'm increasing the contrast lower on the cheek and allowing the contrast. I'm increasing the contrast lower on the cheek and I'm decreasing the contrast up toward the eye. I've gotten a clean part of the smudge stick for the smudging that I'm doing here because all of these value transitions are just so subtle. And if you render them too specific, you will age your subject. So ask yourselves, when do I use sharp contrast and when do I use soft contrast? If your drawing is not looking quite right, you can step back and say, where do I need to soften the contrast? Where do I need to sharpen it? And also stylistically, you can ask yourself that question. As I move away from my focal points, it may be a good compositional decision to lower contrast away from your focal point That's a sort of a compositional trick to lead the eye toward your focal point. If you want, for example, her eyes to be the focal point, you can increase the contrast at the eyes, decrease the contrast away from the eyes. I would encourage you to be very careful with this strategy. You can make your drawings look very cheesy very quickly by overdoing this. You know, I haven't gotten a perfect likeness in this drawing. If this were a commission, I'd be worried about that. I really would want to push it toward a perfect likeness. But I will admit, when I did this drawing, I really wanted to just practice portraiture. I wanted to make a demonstration. And so I found this image on a stock photo site. I don't remember which one. If you are just wanting to practice, stock photo websites like Unsplash or Pixabay, I don't know, there's tons of them. They're a great place to find portrait references. And whenever I'm practicing a portrait, often I decide, what do I want to practice? You know, if you just practice sort of with the vague idea of wanting to get better, it may not go as well. But sometimes I'll say, I want to really explore edges. I think when I looked at this photo, I probably said I want to explore edges. Look at the soft, wispy edges on her hair. Look at the sharp, angled edges along her jawline. The jawline is still sharp and angular between her cheek and her neck, but the edge is soft. Whereas the edge between her jaw and the hair behind her head on the left side, well, that's a very sharp, high contrast transition. And then from her neck down, all the transitions are soft. I mean, just because of the high amount of just bright, ubiquitous light. So when you practice, you know, I haven't had a lot of luck finding good portrait images on Pinterest for drawing from. I find that there's mostly a bunch of brooding models on Pinterest when I look for portrait references on there. I've had more luck on stock photo sites. And then, of course, the absolute best thing you can do is take your own pictures. That way, if you end up making a really good drawing, it's completely your drawing. You know, if I want to sell this, I don't know. I probably have to consult the photographer. And I've done that before. I have worked from images and contacted the photographers and said, hey, are you cool if I make a drawing from this? I've never had a photographer tell me no. Most of the time, they just say, yeah, just credit me if you post it. Which I have clearly failed to do. I'm going to try to find which stock photo site I got this from, and I'll post that information in the description. But this was just for practice. Since doing this, I have started taking all my own photos. But I mean, that's just not realistic. I mean, I think my point, I mean, it's not realistic for everybody. Sometimes you want to just practice. And I think stock photo websites are really helpful for that. Just find a portrait and start practicing. So one of the things I did is I just started constructing a folder, and I just called it headshots. And I got into the habit of whenever I found a cool photo, a cool portrait, I would just put it into that folder. That way, whenever I want to practice, I just open the folder, find something, and start working. And there you go. And so I think that this drawing is a good example of just me trying to get better, me trying to master the art of portrait drawing. Right there, what I'm using to soften the value on that neck, that's just a chamois cloth, an artist's chamois cloth. I think they're like $2 at any art store. But they are really good if you want to pull a lot of the charcoal off the page and smooth everything out. I'm really hoping that I soften that line between the neck and the shoulder on the left side. It feels a little harsh to me. And I'm talking about it being harsh compositionally. I think the sharpness of that line just pulls a little bit too much attention away from the face. So I'm hoping I soften that. You know, and a big question that I'm probably dealing with right now in the drawing, I'm probably asking myself, how much detail do I want to go in on the shoulders, arms, hands, etc.? I know I want to do more than what I've got, but how much more? Just because there are hands in the composition does not mean that you need to render them to completion. Stylistically, and this is sort of my own personal choice, I mean, you can choose how you want to approach things. There are no rules, just tools. Once I have captured the energy of the pose, the story of the moment, I like to stop. If I don't need hands to be fully rendered to tell the story, then why would I render them? If the hands are doing something very interesting, then maybe I will concentrate a little more on them as they become more, main characters in the story. But I'd encourage you to let yourself, if you've accomplished what you set out to do, then maybe let parts of your drawing be loose and unfinished. Okay, I think this is a good place to stop for episode 4. Episode 5, I will take this from where it is now to being a finished drawing hanging up on my wall in my art gallery. So, I hope you all have enjoyed this. As always, like, comment, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you all for watching. I hope you learned something. And I'll catch you on episode 5 where I finish this drawing. Peace.